Especially special needs children and education. This holds especially true for children with autism due to a lack of specific schools catering for them. Iviwe Poti filed this report for us.
He won't have a place to go to school. He will stay in the township.
A struggle for parents with autistic children. Where will my child get an education? According to Africa Check, an estimated 1 million South Africans have autism. A lack of knowledge about the condition and a dire shortage of schools catering for these children is of huge concern.
For autistic child, they need their own school that is conducive for their condition. When it comes into
what he can't do is read and write. If he must draw or build something, he is very good. But if he must write, it's a struggle. Our kids are different, being that they do different things. My child likes being on the phone, and if he sees a computer, he knows what to do. He knows he is good at such things. My wish is for the government to build a school, even if there is 3, so at least our children will have a place. There are so many of them here in the township with autism.
At least abantwana bethu babe nendawo because baninzi abantwana bahleli elokishini abane-autism.
These parents are fighting for the right to education for their children.
Anger, I can't depression, because our kids abawafumani rights zabo as they are South Africans, and they've said all those things. They are saying those things ngomlomo, saying that every child must be at school.
The Department of Education in the Eastern Cape is aware of the backlog, but they say they are working with parents of autistic children.
In terms of the backlog, we also have about 302 across the province. Remember, the 71 is only in PE. Across the province, we've got about 302 that have not been placed. But as the department, whenever there is a space available, we quickly make sure that we place those learners.
Autistic children need a certain level of attention and care. A large number of parents now just keeping their children at home because this level of care is lacking at schools and private institutions. Some children also suffer abuse away from home.
It's the abuse. It happened before and no one said anything, not even a letter. What does it mean if a school withholds such?
He
would come back scratched. When I queried, they said he had scratched himself. But I thought there is no way a child can scratch their face to a point where you can see the underlying fat under the skin.
The Department of Education have also placed autistic children in schools for children living with disabilities to alleviate the shortage of specialist education.
Our schools, all our schools, which is our special schools, we evaluate learners before we place them. Now, of the 22 schools that we're having, every learner that is in those schools, remember these are some of the special schools. We treat them as special schools, which is they have learners with disabilities and learners with autism. Now both are studying there because as the department, what we do is we take learners with autism as learners with special disabilities.
The World Organization have found that over the past 50 years, the prevalence of autism is increasing. Autism is also 4 times more likely to be diagnosed in boys than girls. Iviwe Poti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Well, as we mark Child Protection Week, focus falls on children with special needs. Last year, the case of little Katlego Joja, the 10-year-old autistic child who went missing, threw a spotlight on this condition. Little Katli's body was discovered in a stream not far from her home days after her disappearance. Now, it's estimated that autism affects 1 out of every 110 children and 1 in 70 boys, making it the fastest growing developmental disability in the world today. It's estimated that 2% 50% of people in South Africa are living with autism. That's over 1 million people right now. It is more common than childhood cancer, juvenile diabetes and pediatric AIDS combined. Well, for more, we're joined via Skype by Vicky Lamb. She's an education specialist at Autism SA. Good afternoon, Vicky, and thank you so much for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Hi, and thank you very much.
Vicky, the last time we spoke, there were only about 5 government schools for children with autism. That number may have changed. You can give us that update. What progress has been made in this regard, Vicky?
So we have got a few more autism schools. We've got, I think, about 7 now across the country. And there's various units across the country in a variety of schools.
Vicky, we heard in the clip before, I'm sure you'd have heard there, that autistic children are sometimes being placed with learners with various other disabilities in some schools due to a limitation on resources and so on. Why could this be detrimental to an autistic child?
It could go both ways. We could see autistic children developing and socializing with those individuals. But we could also see them regressing and seeing them but struggle a little bit in terms of the socialization, because they're not with people who understand them. So it could go either way.
Just on that note of socialization of an autistic child, can you just give us a sense of how children with autism, which is really a vulnerable group within a vulnerable group, see and interact with the world around them, Vicky?
They interact differently to the rest of the population. So they think, they speak, they play differently to the way that we do. Socially, they will interact differently, and it might come across as though they're not wanting to be social or they don't want to interact, and that's a common misunderstanding when it comes to autism.
Vicky, in little Katlego's case, she went missing, and many experts have said that it is very possible she could have wandered off.
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of children who wander off, and it's for a variety of different reasons. It's a common problem that many families face, and some families have medical alert bracelets. It depends on the individual, but it can happen within seconds.
What are the main areas of difficulty when it comes to an autistic child, Vicky? Would it be their social communication skills, interaction? Just give us a sense of how this condition will impact on the normal day-to-day running of a child's activities.
So that's going to depend on the individual. We will see some individuals have difficulties with communication. Some will have difficulties socializing. A lot of autistic people will have difficulties with their sensory profile. So it really depends on each person. More commonly, we see the communication difficulties, and that doesn't mean that they're not thinking or they're not perceiving the environment. They are. It's just a difficulty in terms of getting the communication out in a way that other people understand.
All right. In little Katli's case, I remember the community played such an integral role in the search for her. How aware are neighbours, community members of the condition and how to manage children with autism? Because that's really a big challenge right now, isn't it? And what kind of support do families with autistic children receive in the country now? What are their special needs, and is it being adequately met at this point?
The awareness is lacking. We need more awareness. We need people to understand, particularly in our more rural communities where poverty and food and that type of thing takes preference over disability. So we really need to push that awareness in those areas. With regards to the support, Autism South Africa is trying to provide those supports for individuals and for families but we're quite a small organization, so to reach everybody is tricky. But those families need support. They need support from their community, from their families, from their friends, from everyone around them to come together.
Vicky, just on that note, there are so many families in difficult socioeconomic circumstances right now. What can communities and families with autistic children do right now in their own homes, in their own spaces, to cope and manage the condition as best as they can and keep such children safe from harm?
I think it's about being aware of what not just autism is, but disabilities in general, and going to those families and saying, you know what, if you need a break, you can come to us, or we understand and we accept your child or the person that you have in your home, so that those families feel accepted and they can feel like they're part of a community. Because often that's what's lacking, and they feel isolated and ignored, and a lot of the time they get almost judged because they've got this autistic person or this person with a disability in their house, and that gets tricky, and I think that leads to a lot of isolation.
Vicky Lamb, she's the education specialist at Autism South Africa, joining us via Skype there. Well, let's move on now. The Sea Vista township in St. Francis Bay in the Eastern Cape, and some of the people living there are undergoing some change.